is our prelim task. It was the first thing we were asked to do, and it was kind of our first go at using cameras and editing software, and we had to use a match on action, 180-degree rule, and shot reverse shot in a conversation.
Here, the takes are too long compared to our actual thriller. It's quite fast paced compared to our actual thriller, and the sound is not very not very good compared to the thriller.
We didn't use any music in this, so the sound is a bit bad because you can hear other people's voices in the background, and when it switches from shot to shot, the voice is cut and it sounds quite boring and rubbish.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing we took from this was that audio played quite a big role in the final production of the video.
There we tried to use a pan shot, but we managed to cut out Jack's head, so when we used it in our real thriller we didn't do that, and we tried to not cut out people's heads so it wouldn't erase the character from the setting.
We also learned a lot about the handling of the camera, how we couldn't just hold cameras and it would jolt about, especially when filming the news report.
So there was two very long shots, which actually dragged out where not much happens, which we took in our thriller. We learned quite a bit about that for our thriller because our thriller had to be fast paced, so we used shorter, quicker shots.
Yeah, because when we did the first cut, we tried to follow how we used our shots in the prelim, and it didn't work, so we had to change that for our final cut.
I think we learned a lot about, we progressed a lot from our prelim by looking at actually researching to other thrillers. So we saw we compared our prelim to other thrillers and how the pace flow and how the flow of it changed, because this was very long, very slow. But we found out if we need to build pace, they need to be through the door in about 6 shots at least.
Yeah. The match on action, we tried to use 2 cameras at first, but it didn't work because you could see us in the background. So we then had to do filming it twice, and you can see that it doesn't exactly match perfectly. So we had to try and change that for the matches on action in a real one, which we used 2 cameras for, and we placed them so that you couldn't see them.
It gave us extra help, so we had to film our thriller more than once, go through every scene more than once.
Make sure we were careful.
Yeah, make sure we were careful about what was filming and how we was filming it.
If you can also see how we jumped from camera to camera, we actually got Jack jumping back, so we had to change that in our thriller, especially when Charlie was walking down the road. We made sure that he couldn't jump back down the road again with the next shot, and that he continuously flowed from one shot to the next.
And we made sure that our character was kind of aware of where the cameras were, so that it was not looking at them at all and kind of ignoring the fact they were there, rather than moving out of the way for them.
Originally with our first match in action, we tried a close-up of the handle, which didn't work because it jumped. We broke the 180-degree rule and also jumped from shot to shot. Not necessarily like the quickness in that wasn't as good, as effective, because it was jumping all over the place rather than quickly flowing, which is what we found out in our thriller needed to be done.
Here, we found out that the speech of the people wasn't necessarily clear enough. So we didn't use any speech or dialogue in our thriller.
Yeah, we kind of learned from that mistake.
Yeah.
It's quite hard to make dialogue seem effective in a fast-paced sequence
Introduction,
of events.
especially when introducing a character.
Even when with our budget and our equipment we had, iPhones weren't as big as sound as maybe, we needed a real microphone we found, and we didn't have that available.
We didn't use a 180-degree in our thriller, as we didn't have 2 characters. It was only focused around 1 character, so we didn't do shot reverse shot neither, as there was only 1 character to be. The editing was motivated around.
Although we tried to use it, didn't when we had the package, we kept switching from the package to the character and how they related to each other.
think there's a small element of that with the news report as well.
Yeah.
On the scene where Charlie focuses on the TV. It was all brief and not completely shot reverse shot, but it had
Like, it
the
was
same
rapid, so
aspect.
that- yeah.
We also had to figure out with our characters, because as you can see here, our characters, we had to brief in depth about what type of person they are, because especially in the thriller,
We
the
had
actors
to use
had to
props,
be,
didn't we?
the actors and prompts. Like for example, in our prelim, we just set a table up in a school, and our characters didn't really have a
Had
clear
props
briefing.
or-
Or their tone of voice that we needed to use, which we had to change in our final piece, which we learned from this, about how our actors should go about our thriller and be aware of the cameras.
We focused more on the actual dialogue in our prelim, whereas in the real one we didn't. So in this one we kind of didn't focus on the posture or the hand movements or expressions on the person's face, which we had to take into account in our real one. So these people kind of, they look just generally having a conversation, whereas we had to convey like panic and shock in our film.
Yeah, I think that was the main switch we had between the prelim and the overall film.
Because the prelim was quite casual, whereas we didn't want to do casual for a thriller, because that's not conventions.
I think what also we learned from this type of thing is all our shots are at the same level. Everything was at the same level in our prelim. Whether we didn't have really high angle or low angle shots, it was all very, very flat, which we learned needed to be changed because it would make our thriller not more interesting, but definitely more stand out, fast paced, and the more unique shots you have, the more it keeps the audience on the edge, I think.
I think we use too much of a shot reverse shot because it keeps switching just between the two shots, so we probably could have included more than just two shots for the last 10 seconds. And it means that we kind of didn't really take into account the kind of the pace of it, so it kind of just carried on, and we didn't take like matters into our own hands on how fast we wanted it to be.
I think when we initially started our prelim, we didn't realise how hard it would be to actually film things effectively. I think that's the main thing we picked up immediately after and while filming our prelim. We found out how we needed to go about. It would take a lot more time and effort than we thought it would do when we went about our prelim.
I think our prelim was quite basic, and it kind of just gave us an insight onto how to kind of shoot using iPhones and how they weren't very compatible. But we tried to use them and render them in high quality for our real one, but it kind of didn't come out the same.
Yeah, I think the prelim sort of showed us all the aspects we really need to focus on and adapt for the atmosphere in the final thriller, which was obviously a lot more fast-paced and tense compared to the social environment.
I think it did motivate us though, our prelim. I think if our prelim had gone really well, it wouldn't have motivated us as much to change our final piece. But because we saw what we needed to improve on, it gave us a lot of time to practice with our cameras, especially the iPhones and the equipment we needed to use to make an actual fast-paced thriller.
It gave us like a building block to start on and progress forward.
Which helped with our final piece.